Welcome to the Deliberate Leaders Podcast. I'm Allison Dunn. Today we're talking about the I'll just do it habit, and why the very instinct that made you great as an individual contributor is quietly making you the bottleneck as a leader. This habit almost always comes from a place of genuine capability. You're experienced, you're efficient, you know what good looks like. And when something isn't moving fast enough, or isn't moving in the right direction, it feels almost irresponsible not to step in. What leaders miss is that they're making a trade. Speed today for capability tomorrow. In my book, Think First, I describe this pattern as a shift from being the architect back to being the firefighter, solving problems as they arrive instead of building the systems that prevent them. And there's a biological pull to this. Under pressure, your brain reaches for its fastest available answer. And the fastest answer is almost always, just handle it yourself. That's autopilot, a default that once worked, running on without being examined. The problem isn't your capability. The problem is that capability, deployed without intention, becomes the ceiling your organization never breaks through. Here's something I want you to understand about your team. They are paying close attention to your patterns, even when you don't realize you're establishing them. I had a client, an operations director at a logistics company, who prided herself on being responsive. Her team knew that if they hit a wall, she'd have an answer within the hour. She was fast, decisive, genuinely great at what she did. Her team loved working for her. What she couldn't see, until we mapped it out together, was that in a single month, she had answered 47 questions her team could have resolved themselves. Not complex strategic calls, vendor coordination, scheduling conflicts, process decisions that had clear precedent. Her team had stopped making those calls because they didn't need to. She had trained them, through 18 months of immediate helpful answers, that the path of least resistance was to just ask her. When she took a week off for the first time in 2 years, her team generated 23 escalations in 5 days. Not because a crisis hit, because they had lost the habit of thinking things through without her. That's the cycle. Think First names directly. They stop thinking, so they bring you more problems. You solve them, so they stop thinking even more. And eventually, you become the bottleneck. Not because your team lacks capability, but because you've systematically untrained it. You think you're being helpful. You're actually building a team that can execute but cannot think. Most of the time, this pattern isn't really about the task. It's about discomfort. Discomfort with watching someone struggle, discomfort with mistakes that could have been prevented, discomfort with the slower, messier pace of real development. I write about a founder in Think First who built a company to $50 million over 15 years. Incredible business. But it was completely dependent on his strategic thinking. When he tried to step back into a chairman role, the business drifted. Strategic decisions piled up. His team could execute beautifully. They just couldn't think independently, because they'd never been given the space to. 7 years later, he's still running day-to-day operations. Not because he wants to, because he built a very lucrative job instead of a business. And that's what team learned helplessness looks like at scale. The team stops developing strategic thinking muscles. They stop seeing patterns. They stop questioning assumptions. They become order takers, very good at implementing your ideas and completely dependent on you to have them. So what does the shift actually look like? It's moving from solving to building thinkers. Not withdrawing, not abandoning your team when they need support, but interrupting the autopilot that says the most useful thing you can do right now is handle this yourself. The question that creates that pause is simple. Am I the right person to solve this, or am I just the fastest? Because those aren't the same thing. Fast isn't the same as effective. And solving this particular problem one more time isn't building anything that outlasts you. So when someone brings you a problem, try replacing, "I'll just do it," with, "What do you think the right next step is?" Or, "What's your recommendation?" That one shift keeps ownership where it belongs, while still giving your team the support of your thinking, not the substitute of your answer. Over time, you stop building dependency. You start building a team that can think strategically without you in the room. That's the difference between scaling yourself, which has a ceiling, and multiplying thinking capacity, which doesn't. Here's the question I want you to sit with today. Where am I stepping in too quickly? And what is that teaching my team? Because the leaders who stay stuck as the smartest person in the room didn't get there through one big decision. They got there through 1,000 small moments of, I'll just do it. Each one reasonable. Each one quietly reinforcing that thinking lives at the top and execution lives everywhere else. If you want to go deeper, this is the exact problem Think First was written to solve. 5 strategic thinking methods to help you stop being the bottleneck and start building an organization that thinks independently and at scale. You can learn more at deliberatedirections.com. Think first. Thanks for listening, and as always, think first.